Greetings class. In this video we're going to discuss a few ideas on how to use feedback in your papers to become a better writer. Now notice we're going to talk about feedback to become a better writer in the long term, not so much how to use feedback to get a better grade on this paper. That's pretty presenting. We usually follow the feedback and will help you improve the paper for resubmission or that sort of thing. But we're hopefully thinking about the long view here, and that's the whole aim of this course is not just how do I make this individual paper better, but how do I improve as a writer so that I'm not making the same mistakes, writing in the same style and rut year after year, paper after paper. That's what we're going to look at here. So some ideas for how to use the individual items of feedback in order to make yourself a better writer. Now, first of all, what should you expect in terms of feedback? Number one, in this course, you'll be getting a lot more feedback than you may typically expect to find in other courses. So just manage your expectations. Other courses will be a lot more content focused, a lot more argument focused, and so your papers, the feedback will have that sort of thing in it. Here we're going to be giving you a little bit of both. Some teachers out there will give you writing feedback, and thank God for them because they're seeking to help you on your journey in writing. But that won't be as common as it will be in this course. Now, as far as the physical form of the feedback, if you used to hand in papers, actual on paper, you would get, red pen or blue pen marks throughout the paper, sometimes correcting things, sometimes writing notes in the margin. The way we do that is we typically put comments in the margin of the paper, offering suggestions, asking questions, that sort of thing, and we'll use the track change feature of the document to make adjustments in there. Now notice we're not going to edit your paper for you. If we fix a comma here or a comma there, that doesn't mean we fixed all the commas in your paper. But we're just alerting you to something that you should pay attention to when you go back to edit and to revise and to indeed rewrite your own paper. Now, let's talk about the kinds of ways that you can take feedback that you're going to get in this paper and not just fix the paper itself, but actually improve in the long term. First of all, what you might want to do is looking at some patterns. In your paper, the comments in the side will not usually be organized. In other words, I and those who are reading your papers are not going to go back necessarily and look at, oh, well, there are 3 different times throughout this paper we had to mention something about maintaining the use of the present tense versus the past tense or something like that. You're going to have to make some of those observations on your own, but noticing those kinds of patterns will help you identify areas of weakness and say, I've seen this item come up a few times. I'm going to write that down and go work on that or go do some reading on that in the future. I may just fix it for this paper, but I've made myself a conscious note to look at that, to find some resources to help me improve on that. Or it might just be a general awareness issue. But some things may require you to do some more research and reading to develop yourself in a certain area. So look for patterns in the comments and the kinds of corrections that you get. Number 2, try to put some of the comments that you're going to get into categories. And maybe it would help even to have a paper or another document open on the side of your paper when you're reading it. And you could look at some of these comments and put them here. I've given you a little acronym, CAPS, over here, to think of some categories like content comments, argument comments, punctuation and grammar, and style comments. And that will help you break some of those out a little bit, and as they're broken out, then you can, again, identify some of the patterns that you're going to need to go look up later, but also it will just help you when you go into the editing process. If you remember in the previous video, we talked about editing on the macro scale, looking at your transition, your arguments, then moving down to each paragraph and making sure each paragraph is a good solid unit, and then finally working down to the nuts and bolts of the grammar. If you can categorize some of the comments, it might help you actually with the paper itself, rather than just going through haphazardly, fixing this, oh, this is a comment about something that's going to take the whole paper, so I have to go back and check everything in the paper. If you take some time to go through the comments and actually categorize them, it could help you in your editing process to know, oh, these are the things I should handle first, and then work myself down to the really nitty-gritty stuff at the very end. So hopefully that could be a helpful suggestion identifying patterns, but also for editing the paper itself. And then lastly, one thing you might want to do is just pick one thing that you're going to master. Just pick one thing out of this paper that after you've read the feedback and you're sitting back and realizing, okay, Mrs. Kreider wrote all these things, even though some of them were hard to hear. She wrote these things because she wants me to be a better writer. And believe me, that's what we want. We want to help you become better writers. But sit back and think about those things and then pick out something that you are going to master, that you're going to do your very best. You may edit the whole paper and revise parts of the paper just to get that one aspect of it as good as you can. Now, hopefully 10 years from now, you'll be able to do it better. You might even be able to do it the first time through in 10 years from now. But picking something allows you to feel I've made an accomplishment from my rough draft to my final draft. I took this dimension of the paper way forward. I improved the other things a little bit, but I took this one aspect of the paper and really improved it the best that I could. And that may help you improve as a writer because realistically, we can only focus on one or two things at a time. And so be realistic with yourself, and coming back to this paper, it will help you to have something else that you've put in your tool belt to say, I know how to do this a lot better now as a result of writing this paper, and that in the future will serve you. Let's say you've taken some of this to heart. You do want to identify ways to become a better writer. You're willing to accept some feedback, and admittedly, I myself face this. It's hard to accept critical feedback sometimes. But take it from this perspective. Mrs. Kreider and those of us that are reading your papers are looking at this as we want to help you improve. We're not just pointing things out to be mean. We're not pointing out things because we're so much better than you and we noticed this and you didn't. Because very well, if you had spent more time editing, you may have noticed some of these things. But we're here to help you, and by pointing some of these things out, we intend to help push you further along, just like any good coach is going to do in a sport or a conductor is going to do in a music setting, by pushing people and pointing out where issues are wrong or where people could do better. It's not intended to drive you down, it's intended to push you forward. So let's say you're at that point, you sat back, you're looking at this, and you're like, okay, I want to improve, I want to master something, I want to improve one of these categories, or I noticed a pattern of problems that I have, and I just don't know where to fix it. Well, maybe a good place to start is some of the books recommended for this course. That's always a good place to look. Mrs. Kreider and those of us that are reading your papers would be happy also to recommend other resources. If you point out to us a specific thing that you want to improve on, we might be able to give you some recommendations. But another good place is if you own Turabian 8th edition, that's a fantastic resource that most people don't know about. Number one, it's broken up into 3 parts, and people tend to think of part 2 as the real reason we require you to get the book Turabian, because it tells you how to cite your sources and that sort of thing. And that's true. Some of you may struggle with your citations, especially on the coming research paper. But that's not the main way that book could help you. The first whole section is all about how to plan and put together a larger paper, how to put together an argument, how to work with a thesis. Now, there's other good books out there about this, but most of you don't know that the first section of Turabian is right there. It's a great resource to give you some ideas to get started on that, and to indeed master different things or improve categorically in areas where you find yourself to be a little bit weak as a writer. Also, the third section gives style issues for Turabian, but it also just gives some basic issues for English grammar and writing, like ways to use different kinds of punctuation and things that you may have forgotten since 3rd grade. Granted, I've been reading that section quite a bit as I'm working on my papers. So hopefully those sections could be an immediate resource for you. And again, we'd be happy to recommend things. But again, as you're reading your feedback, please keep in mind we're here to help you. And we're here to help you in the long term. We don't just want you to get an A on this paper. What we want is to see you take real steps at mastering different elements of writing and knowing different areas and ways that you can improve in the future. And if that happens, no matter what the grade you get on these papers, this class will have been a success for you. So hopefully this is helpful, and feel free to send us comments or questions.